What to observe when examining animals. Now, kailangan natin to pag-usapan because eventually you're going to observe animals in the field. And para lang mas guided ang observation ninyo, we need to discuss this one. First, first sign to look for is the behavior. So if there is a change in behavior, so for example, biglang naging aggressive yung animal, bigla na lang nag-hide sa corner or bigla lang naging restless, so that's a sign that there is something wrong with that animal. Also, the voice, there's a change in vocalization. Now, animals don't speak like we do. However, meron din silang vocalization na you'll know that the animal is in pain. And it is very evident in dogs. So for example, pag may aso na sinipa, you'll know based on the sound na in pain yung animal. So, by the way, if there's a change in the voice, there could be a problem sa mouth, sa oral cavity ng animal. So, or sa respiratory, baka mayroong infection doon sa respiratory system. So, kapag merong parang rough voice, or pwede rin na nawala yung voice ng animal, so baka may problema somewhere in the throat. Also, you need to check the eating habit of the animal. So baka mayroong problema doon sa prehension or sa pagkuha ng food. There are times kasi na mayroong sugat sa mouth, kaya hindi siya masyado maka-eat. Also, swallowing reflex baka problematic, and regurgitation or sa rumination. Appetite as well. So, dapat i-check yung appetite. Usually, pag nagkakaroon ng decrease in feed intake, that's a sign of an animal having a problem. Also, check the defecation if the animal is straining. Now, sa dog, this is obvious kasi nag-iiba yung position ng dog kapag mag-defecate. However, in other animals that just stand normally, so medyo mas mahirap siya i-observe. Pero mas madali i-observe doon na sa excreta. Sa tae, is it too soft? Is it too hard? Or with blood stains? So kapag too soft, syempre that's diarrhea. Too hard now, that's constipation. And yung color pala ng blood stains doon sa excreta will give you a hint kung asan banda yung problema. So, for example, you see blood stain doon sa excreta na fresh blood pa yung nandun. So that means the problem is just somewhere in the large intestine because hindi masyadong naluto yung blood So hindi siya naging kulay dinuguan. So if the color is color dinuguan, that means the problem is in the small intestine. Kasi masyadong malayo yung binyahe niya before siya nakalabas sa anus. Parang naluto siya doon sa loob. Also, urination. Nahihirapan ba siya mag-urinate? Or nagkakaroon ba ng dribbling? So, after niya umihi, meron bang patak-patak after one? So, that's dribbling. So, kapag nagkakaroon ng dribbling, that means that most likely merong bara doon sa urethra. Pwede rin nagkakaroon ng problema doon sa nerve around the bladder. So, check also the posture. So, rigid ba yung katawan or mayroon bang weakness sa ibang part? So, kapag rigid yung legs, it could be tetanus infection. Pag meron namang part na weak, parang hindi makatayo because of too much weakness, baka merong problema sa nerve. That's also one. So, gait or yung lakad ng animal. So, kapag may problema doon sa gait, usually the problem is nasa feet or sa hoof, especially if the environment of the animal is always wet or moist. So, that's a recipe for a hoof problem. Also, check the appearance of the animal. If droopy ba yung head, dull ba yung eyes, or is the animal thin, is the animal fat, or meron bang discharges sa orifice. So, when you say orifice, yung mga entrance or labasan ng mga tubular organ like yung sa anus, that's orifice din yan. Yung sa nose, nasal area. That's also an orifice. Check also the skin and coat. Kung merong parasites, kung merong alopecia, that means merong nakakalbo, that's alopecia. Is it dry or rough? When it is dry and rough, most likely there is a microscopic parasite present. So, usually niyan, the causative agent is a parasite na mite family. So, kamag-anak ng gagamba, just microscopic. So, they destroy the cells surrounding the hair follicle at saka yung mga nag-release ng natural oil. So, kapag nasira ngayon ng parasite yung areas surrounding the hair follicle and yung mga cells doon na nag-release ng natural oil, so wala ng natural oil na pupunta doon sa coat ng animal to give it that glossy look. Check also the breathing pattern. So, masyado bang mabilis o masyado bang slow ang breathing pattern ng animal. If the animal is breathing too fast, so that means kulang yung oxygen niya sa katawan. So that's a compensatory mechanism na bumibilis yung breathing pattern. Now, if the breathing pattern is too slow, so baka may problema na sa respiratory pa rin and sa circulatory system. So, depende na yan sa case. Basta check on the breathing pattern. So, in terms of pain, pag masyadong reactive sa stimuli or masyadong parang wala na rin reaction doon sa stimuli, it could be a sign that there is a problem. So kapag halimbawa hinawakan mo yung paa at naging reactive siya doon sa stimuli, that means there is something wrong doon sa paa. Now, if ever meron siyang obvious na inflammation, so for example, in the ear, meron siyang inflammation doon, tapos pinitik mo yung ear at hindi siya nag-react even though it's very obvious that there's an inflammation in that area, that means there is another source of pain, most likely internal organ, kaya hindi siya pumapalag. So, pitikin mo yung tenga, parang baliwala lang sa kanya because mas nafe-feel niya yung pain doon sa loob. So, isa din yan sa dapat yung bantayan. Mucous membrane. So, ito yung mga moist na part sa mouth, sa eyes. So, dapat hindi yan siya dry at saka hindi yan siya pale. So, supposed to be dapat pinkish. So, kapag yung mucous membrane is dry, pale, mayroong hemorrhages, and ulcers, that means mayroong problema dyan. So, when we say ulcer, doesn't only refer to ulcer doon sa stomach. So, when you say ulcer, nagkakaroon ng butas from the skin up to the muscular level. So, yan yung tinatawag na ulcer. So, for example, like luas. So, that's an example of ulcer. In dairy production, kapag nagkakaroon ng mastitis or inflammation of the udder, yung milk is nagkakaroon ng coagulation niya. And mas mainit siya doon sa normal lang na milk. And sometimes there is also blood in the milk. So, kapag ganyan, hindi yan siya kinukunan ng milk for human consumption, segregate and tinitreat mo na yung cow. So, kapag ang temperature naman is above the normal, that means there is a fever and that also means that there is an ongoing infection. Pag masyado namang mababa yung temperature, baka may problema yan sa circulatory system. So, why is it very important for us to have this early detection? Because first is it will increase our opportunity for successful treatment. Kasi sayang din naman, bigay-bigay ka ng antibiotic, tapos 90% dying na pala yung animal, so most likely that one will not affect. And also, it will lessen the losses in the farm. Now, yung diseases is meron din yung classification. So, first is etiology. So, under etiology, merong direct at merong indirect. So, when we say direct, it is caused by pathogens. So, when we say pathogens, yung nagkukause ng mga disease. So, bacteria, virus, fungi, kasali yan sila dyan. Pag indirect, that's caused by nutrient deficiency, metabolic diseases, injury. So, hindi siya cause ng any pathogen. So, most likely, poor management lang yan ang result. So, meron din classification of disease based on infectiousness. So, pag infectious, that's caused by pathogen, and pag non-infectious, usually poor farm practices lang and also metabolic. So, classification of disease based on transmissibility. So, first is contagious. It can be transmitted by direct or indirect contact. So, when we say direct contact, halimbawa, hinawakan, nagkaroon ng sexual contact. So, yan yung example ng direct. Indirect is contaminated feed or water. So, the other one is the non-contagious one. So, we have here a reminder that all contagious diseases are infectious, but not all infectious diseases are contagious. Okay, let's go back with the definition. So when we say infectious, caused by pathogens. And pag contagious is transmissible by direct or indirect contact. So, ito, example. All contagious diseases are infectious. So, for example, like flu. So, yung flu is an example of infectious and contagious. Kasi infectious siya because caused siya by a virus, and contagious siya because pwede mo siya makuha through direct contact. So, kapag may nag-sneeze sa harap mo, yan, pwede ka ma-infect. Now, ito naman, but not all infectious diseases are contagious. So, for example, in the case of dengue, dengue is a kind of infectious disease because it's caused by the virus. However, hindi siya contagious because hindi mo siya makuha through direct or indirect contact. So, kailangan pa ng vector or isang lamok, no? Aedes aegypti, para lang ma-infect ka ng dengue. So, that's one. So, marami pang iba, like Lyme disease. So, tick naman yung vector. So, based naman sa duration, so meron tayong tinatawag na per acute, and chronic. So, yung sa acute is very sudden. Usually, yun yung mga sudden death. So, after 1 hour, bigla na namatay. So, ganyan yung mga example ng per acute. So, acute, short term, sometimes specifically referring to brief exposure of high intensity. And chronic naman is mas prolonged na duration. Now, meron din tayong classification of disease based on occurrence. So, one is the endemic. So, based on the definition, disease occurs with predictable regularity with only relatively minor fluctuations. So, for example, in the case of dengue, sabihin na natin yearly around 500 yung positive cases. So, for example, 1999, 500, 2000, year 2000, 500, 2001, 500 cases. So, yan ang endemic. Epidemic naman kapag there's a clear in excess of normal expectancy. So, for example, like last year, ang case lang is 500. Tapos biglang naging 1,000 this year. So, that's an example of epidemic. Pag pandemic naman, just like COVID-19, so maraming countries and continents ang affected. Pag sporadic naman, disease occurs only rarely and without regularity. So, for example, last year, present yung disease. This year, wala. Next year, wala na naman. Tapos, babalik na naman. So, that's sporadic. So, thank you for listening.